Imagine being born the bastard son of the wealthiest family in the city, treated like a slave your entire life, and then finally disowned, only to be forcefully married off to the three most famous, permanently crippled ex-heroines in the country. To the rest of the world, my life was a tragic, humiliating joke, a guaranteed death sentence. But what those arrogant elites didn't know was that getting thrown out with the trash was exactly what I needed to awaken an overpowered system, one that multiplied every single investment I made into my new wives by 10,000 times. In just a few days, I went from a powerless F-rank nobody to an absolute monster. I went from scrubbing floors to slaughtering high-level mutated beasts with my bare hands, brewing magical meals that repair shattered meridians, and boldly staring down a legendary 7th-tier master who could crush my skull with a single thought. The families who abandoned us and the assassins hunting us in the shadows thought we were easy prey. They are about to find out they just created their worst nightmare. Welcome back. If you love overpowered main characters, insane revenge arcs, and arrogant enemies getting brutally slapped back into reality, you are in exactly the right place. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Gold Anime 24K so you never miss an episode of this epic journey. Now let's get into the story. The evening sky bled orange as the sleek black limousine idled in front of a crumbling, run-down bungalow. I stood there staring at the faded, worn house key in my palm, alongside a measly $10,000. The Ashford family butler hadn't even bothered to look me in the eye when he delivered the final ultimatum. I was officially disowned, cut off, tossed out like trash. I was born the bastard son of the wealthy Ashford family, cursed with a pathetic F-rank mana affinity. In a world where power was everything, I was less than dirt. For 19 years, I was hidden away and treated like a slave. So when they offered me a contract for my freedom, I signed it without a second thought. But I should have known the Ashfords wouldn't just let me walk away cleanly. There was a catch, a massive one. I turned around to face my new reality. Standing behind me, draped in pristine white wedding gowns that felt like cruel jokes, were three women. The three most famous crippled ex-heroines in the entire city. And as of 30 minutes ago, they were my wives. In the center sat Myra Calloway, confined to a wheelchair. 3 years ago, she was the Crimson Valkyrie, a brilliant S-rank prodigy who tore through dungeons like a sun goddess. Now, thanks to a catastrophic SSS-rank dungeon incident caused by my family's sheer incompetence, her meridians were completely shattered. She was permanently paralyzed from the neck down. To her left was Lyra Vance, once known as the Shadow Saintess, an assassin so lethal she could smile while slitting your throat. But that same dungeon had ruptured her vocal cords and destroyed her eardrums. Now she stood there in total silence, unable to hear or speak, staring at me with a completely unreadable, hollow gaze. And finally, on Myra's right, shivering violently despite the warm evening air, was Selene Frost. She used to command the Eternal Ice Winter ability. Now she was completely blind and plagued by a chronic, freezing illness that constantly ravaged her body. I had jumped straight from the frying pan into the blazing inferno. But looking at them standing there like broken dolls, I couldn't bring myself to be angry at them. They were victims of my family's greed, just like me. I sighed, walking over to guide them inside. The bungalow was a dump, peeling wallpaper, a dusty scent, and only 2 cramped bedrooms. I set up the larger room, pushing the 2 beds together so the 3 of them could share, while I hauled a cheap air mattress into the broom closet of a second room. When it came time to sleep, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I carried Myra into the bedroom and set her down gently. For the first time all evening, her dull crimson eyes locked onto mine. Her voice, smooth but dripping with venom, broke the silence. She told me I could do whatever I wanted to her, that she was paralyzed and couldn't resist. She even mocked me, suggesting I take all 3 of them since one couldn't see, one couldn't speak, and she couldn't move. It was the ultimate reverse psychology test, daring me to prove I was just the depraved monster my family raised me to be. I just scoffed, told her to save the reverse psychology, and turned off the light. I liked my women to take the initiative anyway. The room went dead silent. Even Selene, who was quietly munching on an apple in the corner, froze in pure shock. They had braced themselves for a nightmare, but I just walked out and went to sleep. The next morning, I stepped up. I cooked breakfast, forced a toothbrush into Myra's mouth despite her furious, diamond-cutting glare, and even carried her to the bathroom to bathe her. I kept my eyes on the ceiling the entire time, ignoring her taunts, proving my actions were purely transactional. The girls were completely out of their element. They had expected a tyrant, but instead they got a caretaker. But our peace didn't last long. While I was out getting ripped off at the grocery store by a local shopkeeper who knew my disgraced face, trouble found our doorstep. When I returned, 3 heavy knocks nearly took the front gate off its hinges. A massive leather jacket-wearing brute named Craig barged in, backed by 3 thugs. He was a level 3 awakened hero, radiating an oppressive mana wave that instantly made my skin crawl. He sneered, demanding $5,000 in protection money, half of everything I had to my name. I tried to play it smart. I tried to hand over the cash to get them to leave, but Craig's greedy eyes drifted past me and landed on the girls. The thugs started licking their lips, talking about how much noble underground collectors would pay for high-quality, broken heroines. One of them actually had the nerve to grab Lyra by the jaw. My sanity snapped. I didn't care that I was an unawakened piece of trash. I didn't care that they outleveled me by miles. I moved like a blur, driving my fist square into the first thug's jaw, kicking the second in the groin, and tackling the third to the floor. For a split second, I had the upper hand through sheer surprise. But reality is a cruel master. Before I could land another hit, they swarmed me. 2 thugs wrenched my arms behind my back while Craig stepped up, his gold tooth gleaming, and drove his fist into my ribs with bone-cracking force. Blood sprayed from my mouth, staining the floorboards. As I dropped to my knees, coughing up blood, Craig snatched my cash envelope. He mocked me, ready to take the girls anyway. But I wiped the blood from my chin and laughed right in his face. I told him he was right, that our families didn't care about us, but they cared about their reputation. I warned him that if some low-life street rats touched the daughters of the Frost, Vance, and Calloway families, his entire crew and their families would be wiped off the face of the earth just to save face. Craig froze, the color completely drained from his face. He knew I was right. Terrified of the consequences, he delivered one last punishing blow to my stomach and scrambled out the door with his thugs, taking all my money with him. I laid on the floor, my vision swimming with stars, my ribs screaming in agony. The girls just stared at me, their expressions a complicated mix of shock and confusion. They couldn't understand why a bastard Ashford would take a beating to protect them. And right then, a mechanical chime echoed in the depths of my skull. A glowing golden interface materialized in front of my eyes. A robotic voice announced that the requirements had been met. For 10 years, I had a dormant system in my body, waiting for a minuscule 0.1 affection rating from 3 different people to activate. By sacrificing everything I had and taking a brutal beating to shield my wives, I had finally crossed the threshold. The 10,000-fold Investment Multiplier System was officially online. The system text scrolled rapidly. It analyzed my actions. It noted that I had sacrificed 100% of my liquid assets and accepted physical violence to create a protective barrier around my targets. Because of this, it triggered a massive 10-fold return. My phone vibrated in my pocket. $50,000 had just been deposited into my account. But the money was nothing compared to what happened next. A violent, invisible shockwave exploded from my chest. It felt like massive, iron chains snapping all at once inside my body. My heart started hammering with the roaring force of a combustion engine, shaking the floor beneath me. Every pore on my skin ripped open, sucking in the ambient mana of the room like a localized hurricane. My F-rank affinity shattered, upgrading to E-rank. Dry, withered meridians that had been useless my entire life suddenly flooded with raw, rushing energy. My bones cracked and popped like a string of firecrackers, my muscles hardening and tightening as 10 months of compressed cultivation forced its way into my system. I leveled up, Awakened Hero Level 2. But the system wasn't done. Deep within my cellular structure, a terrifying heat erupted. It felt like someone had injected boiling lava directly into my veins. Steam actually hissed and rose from my skin as a dark, overbearing demonic essence fused with my DNA. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming as the royal grade flame demon bloodline integrated into my body. When the heat finally faded, releasing a faint smell of sulfur into the air, I laid there, panting heavily, my eyes shining with absolute brilliance. I wasn't trash anymore. I had raw power, fire resistance, and combat skills I had only ever dreamed of. On top of that, I had awakened an E-rank enhanced hearing talent. Just by focusing, the world exploded with sound. I could hear the leaky faucet 3 walls away. More importantly, I could hear the distinct, racing heartbeats of the 3 women in the living room. I stood up, every movement impossibly smooth, and walked to the bathroom to wash the blood and sweat off. When I finally stepped out into the hallway, looking completely healed and radiating a dense, solid pressure, the 3 of them turned their heads in absolute unison. Lyra's eyes widened, tracking the undeniable shift in my aura. Selene tilted her head, her blind eyes trembling. But Myra just stared at me, her crimson eyes locked onto mine. Even with her meridians destroyed, she could feel it. "You've awakened," she whispered, her voice carrying an unusual heavy weight. I didn't hide it. I nodded, admitting that some sort of barrier inside me broke during the fight. I brought up her system panel in my vision, seeing the grim reality of her condition. It listed her as suicidal, depressed, and suffering from level 6 chronic nerve pain every second of every day. Before I could even process the tragic reality of what she was enduring in silence, a sharp, choked gasp suddenly shattered the quiet of the house. The fragile peace didn't last. Suddenly, the temperature in the living room plummeted. Selene stiffened, her breath hitching as an icy seizure took over. Frost rapidly blossomed across her pale skin, freezing the furniture and crawling across the floorboards. She began to tip forward, completely unconscious, heading straight for the sharp edge of the wooden coffee table. I didn't even hesitate. I activated my new flame burst step. 5 mana points vanished from my core and a shockwave of heat exploded beneath my feet. My speed instantly tripled. I blurred across the room, catching her fragile frame right before her head split open on the wood. The cold was agonizing, biting into my arms like 1,000 icy needles, but I forced my flame will into overdrive, holding back the frost just long enough to jam the emergency syringe into her shoulder. The moment she stabilized, the system chimed in my head. For physically shielding her, it slapped a massive 10 times multiplier on my action, instantly rewarding me with minor frost resistance and a new frost sense talent. I was literally leveling up just by keeping them alive. That night, I decided to test my luck in the kitchen. I threw together a slow-simmered chicken and wild herb broth. It was basic, but the moment I fed the first spoonful to Myra, the system went absolutely crazy. It recognized the emotional and physical investment, upgrading me on the spot to a peak novice foodsmith and downloading 5 specialized magical nourishment recipes directly into my brain. I wasn't going to let an opportunity like that slide. The next morning, I took my newly acquired 50 grand and went on a massive spending spree in the merchant quarter. I didn't care about the cost. I dropped $14,000 on premium magical herbs like sun moon fruit and ground dragon bone without even blinking. The shopkeepers looked at me like I was some hidden billionaire, completely stunned that I didn't even try to haggle. I then spent thousands more on heavy-duty steel security for the house, sleek AI smart glasses to help Lyra and Selene communicate, and top-tier Type 1 relics designed to reduce pain and anxiety. By the time I got home, my bank account was basically at zero, but I didn't care. I knew the system was going to pay me back tenfold. I walked into the house, which was now fortified with heavy iron bars and steel deadbolts, and went straight to the kitchen. Using my new foodsmith skills, I brewed the meridian-soothing broth. By the time it was done, the thick, golden liquid radiated pure, refined mana. It was a genuine grade 1 enchanted meal. When I brought it to the table and fed Myra a spoonful, her crimson eyes practically bulged out of her head. She knew exactly what it was. Her useless, F-rank husband had just casually whipped up a high-level magical meal that instantly started soothing her shattered meridians and dulling her chronic nerve pain. She stared at me, completely flabbergasted, wondering if I had secretly sold a kidney to afford all of this. I just laughed and pulled out the velvet boxes from my bag. I slid a silver pain-reducing relic onto Myra's wrist, and the moment the magical pulse hit her spine, her breath hitched as the agony she'd endured for 3 years physically dropped. She was completely stunned, stammering out in disbelief that I had actually bought her a Type 1 artifact. I handed the calming bands and the AI smart glasses to Lyra, who silently accepted them, her dark eyes softening in genuine awe. But the real shocker came from Selene. After finishing her golden broth, the blind, chronically ill girl who hadn't spoken a single word since we met, slowly tilted her head toward me, parted her pale lips, and whispered one single word: warm. That one word was the catalyst. The moment it left her mouth, a flood of golden notifications exploded in my vision. The system had tracked the physical, mental, and emotional investments, and it went absolutely nuclear. It instantly bumped me up to a rank 1 master food smith and fed me 2 whole months of compressed mana refinement. And best of all, it mass upgraded every single item I had just bought. The basic Type 1 relics instantly evolved into ultra-rare Type 2 artifacts. The AI glasses upgraded to track real-time mana signatures, and the basic home security system was infused with magical, mana-sensitive perimeter wards. I was sitting on a gold mine of overpowered assets, and I hadn't even scratched the surface. The rush of power from the system's latest payout was absolutely intoxicating. In the blink of an eye, the knowledge of a rank 1 master foodsmith flooded my brain, engraving complex magical recipes directly into my muscle memory. More terrifyingly, the system pumped 2 entire months of compressed mana refinement straight into my core. Added to my previous rewards, I had just absorbed a full year's worth of cultivation in less than 48 hours. I instantly broke through to a level 3 awakened hero. My strength, agility, and physique skyrocketed. If the Hero Association saw my growth rate, they would have locked me in a lab and dissected me. But my victorious high was instantly shattered by the low, heavy rumble of a massive engine outside my front gate. My newly awakened E-rank hearing picked up the sound of polished leather shoes on the asphalt. I unlocked the heavy steel deadbolt and stepped onto the porch. Parked right against the curb of my rundown neighborhood was a pristine, jet-black Rolls-Royce. And stepping out of it, flanked by towering, suited bodyguards, was Valentina Ashford, my stepmother. This was the ice-cold aristocrat who had orchestrated my lifetime of suffering, the woman who had spent a decade reducing me to a slave and erasing anyone who dared to show me pity. She glided into my living room like she owned the place, her winter blue eyes scanning my worn-out furniture and my 3 crippled wives with barely concealed disgust. She mocked them, calling them a waste of brilliance, before turning her venom on me. I told her to get the hell out of my house, reminding her I had severed all ties with the Ashford family. But Valentina didn't even flinch. Instead, she paused at the door, flashing a terrible, beautiful smile, and dropped a bombshell that made the blood in my veins turn to ice. The official investigation into the SSS-rank dungeon disaster was finally closed. It wasn't a miscalculation. Someone had intentionally altered the records. It was a deliberate, coordinated assassination attempt to wipe out the 3 greatest prodigies of their generation. And now, she pointed out with a sickening chuckle, those exact same assassins knew the girls were sitting completely defenseless in a rundown bungalow. When the door clicked shut behind her, the silence in the room was deafening. Myra didn't even open her eyes. She just let out a cold snort, telling me that if I hadn't figured out we were sitting ducks already, I was even dumber than she thought. I didn't have time to panic. I had to get stronger and fast. I needed a hero license to buy legitimate weapons and monster cores, which meant I had to pass the Hero Guild's dungeon trial. For the next 3 days, I became a machine. I woke up before dawn cooking magical, mana-infused meals that actively repaired my wives' shattered bodies. I forced Myra through grueling physical therapy, ignoring her prideful insults as I worked life back into her atrophying muscles. And every afternoon, I beat the absolute hell out of a punching bag in the backyard, mastering my flame demon bloodline skills. I was making rapid progress, but it still wasn't enough. I realized just how out of my depth I was when a 16-year-old girl from next door casually hopped onto my backyard fence. Her name was Tessa, the local baker's daughter. Except, normal baker's daughters don't balance flawlessly on a 2-inch wooden beam like it's solid ground, and they certainly don't possess 0 readable mana signatures while moving like master assassins. She watched me train for 10 minutes before casually pointing out that my punching form was garbage. She dropped into my yard, effortlessly demonstrating how to channel power from the ground up, generating a strike so fast and heavy it sounded like a gunshot. She warned me that hero work was an ugly, deadly business, casually mentioning that her B-rank hero mother had died in a low-level dungeon. Before I could even fully process her terrifying lack of an aura, she vaulted back over the fence and vanished. That night, I sat on my air mattress and pulled up my system interface. My stats were completely absurd. My mana affinity had leaped to C-rank, and I was armed with a royal-grade bloodline and lethal active skills. But more importantly, I checked my inventory. The system had upgraded all the cheap relics I bought for the girls into incredibly rare, highly expensive Type 2 artifacts. I walked out to the living room and approached Myra. Her brows were furrowed in constant agony, the cheap Type 1 pain bracelet barely taking the edge off. Without a word, I unclasped it and locked the new, flawless Type 2 Serenity bracelet onto her wrist. The instant the clasp clicked shut, Myra physically trembled. The chronic agony that had tortured her for 3 long years instantly vanished by another 20%. Her crimson eyes flew open, staring at me in absolute flabbergasted shock. She demanded to know if I had sold a kidney to afford a genuine Type 2 artifact. I just smirked, swapping out her clunky glasses for the upgraded AI model that allowed her to browse the internet seamlessly with eye tracking. I gave Lyra her upgraded gear as well, and for the first time, her new glasses translated her thoughts into a robotic text-to-speech voice, allowing her to finally communicate. As I packed up their old, discarded Type 1 gear, I formulated a plan. I was going to sell the old relics on the black market, use the cash to hire a temporary guard for the house, and take the hero exam. I was halfway to the front door, ready to execute the plan, when an ear-splitting, explosive sound violently ripped through the quiet neighborhood. The faint sound drifted over 5 city blocks, barely registering as a whisper. But to my E-rank-enhanced hearing, it might as well have been a thunderclap. It was the high-pitched, wailing tone of a monster outbreak siren. Dungeons were supposed to be sealed, but occasionally, a gate destabilized, dumping mutated nightmares straight into civilian territory. I closed my eyes and pushed my hearing to the absolute limit. A 200-meter radius of sound rushed into my brain. I heard the horrifying, wet crunches of breaking bone, desperate screams, and the chaotic gunfire of overwhelmed heroes. The siren was coming from the merchant quarter, and it was spreading fast. I didn't waste a single second. I sprinted through the bungalow, locking every door and window, barricading the exits with the fridge and dining table. I warned the girls, telling them to lock themselves in the bedroom immediately. But instead of panic, Lyra just looked at me. Her new AI glasses translated her thoughts in a flat, robotic voice. "We are already dead. The monsters would be doing us a favor." I was completely stunned. They were so broken by their pasts that they actually saw a monster massacre as a mercy killing. I shoved Myra's wheelchair into the bedroom, practically ordering them to lock the door behind me. But when I stepped back into the hallway, I heard absolutely nothing. No click of the lock, nothing. They were just sitting in there, waiting for the end. Before I could even process my fury, the reinforced iron bars on the kitchen window screeched and shattered like cheap plastic. A massive black-furred dark hound hauled itself through the broken frame. It was a 4-star mutated beast, bigger than a lion, with jaws that could snap a man in half. I grabbed a useless, ceremonial broadsword from the wedding gifts and a kitchen knife. I didn't have time to be terrified. As the hound lunged, I drove the blade upward with everything I had, sinking it deep into its skull. The system instantly chimed, notifying me that my slaughter extraction system was activated, feeding me raw stats with every kill. But I didn't have time to celebrate. The front door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. 2 5-star dark hounds charged in, flanking me with terrifying speed. I dodged by a hair's breadth, slicing their legs and bellies with my knives, fighting like a cornered animal. Just when I thought I had the upper hand, a massive force slammed into my back like a speeding truck. I was launched across the hallway, crashing into the wall, my weapons clattering away. I looked up, coughing blood. A 6-star mutated beast stood there, radiating an oppressive strength of over 150 points. My strength was only 75. It was a mathematical impossibility for me to win. My brain screamed at me to use my flame burst step and run. I could survive, but if I ran, my wives would be slaughtered. I looked toward the bedroom. With my enhanced hearing, I could hear them. Myra took a deep, final breath. Lyra stepped closer to the door, waiting. Selene's heart raced as she whispered, "It's finally here." They were welcoming death. Something inside me snapped. A blinding, white-hot rage exploded in my chest. They were blessed with everything, talent, status, their senses, and the second they faced a setback, they wanted to give up, while I had fought for scraps my entire life just to survive. "How can you be so selfish?" I roared. I triggered my scorching fury. My blood literally ignited. My muscles swelled as my strength spiked by a massive 50%. My eyes burned with literal fire. The 6-star hound lunged for the bedroom door, its claws tearing through the wood. I triggered flame burst, accelerating by 300%, blurring across the room and driving my blade straight through the beast's eyes and into its brain. The system instantly dumped massive stats into my core, and I leveled up to Tier 4 on the spot. The remaining hounds swarmed the house. I became a total slaughterhouse machine. Using my newly acquired Type 2 hidden needles, which auto-corrected their flight path like guided missiles, I pinned 6-star beasts to the walls. I grabbed the broadsword, blurring around the room, decapitating and disemboweling wave after wave of hounds until the entire house was painted in blood. By the time the Hero Association's Silver Rank response team finally arrived, they stopped dead in their tracks. They looked at the mountain of high-level corpses, then looked at me, the infamous bastard Ashford, standing in the center of the carnage, dripping in blood. The team leader was so completely stunned, she actually gave me a formal hero's salute. While the medics patched me up in an evacuation tent, the system finally caught up, and the rewards were absolutely reality-breaking. Because I had hit 10 confirmed kills, the system permanently upgraded my investment returns to a 100x multiplier. It flooded my body with a full year of compressed cultivation, instantly rocketing me to a Tier 7 awakened hero. My mana affinity jumped to A rank, and my bloodline mutated into an origin-grade berserk flame demon bloodline, something so rare it didn't even exist in the history books. I received a Type 3 macro-splicing saber, a permanent house protection talisman, and a Grade 3 restoration pill capable of healing severed meridians. But the most important rewards were 3 specific D-rank talent cards: echolocation, telepathy, and mana arms, abilities that were practically tailor-made to cure my wife's disabilities. The Hero Association loaded us into a luxury limousine to transfer us to the Grand Meridian Hotel. Sitting in the back of the spacious car, the tension was suffocating. I didn't say a word. The girls could feel the sheer, suffocating weight of my anger radiating off me. They had wanted to die, and I had bled to keep them alive. And with my new 100x multiplier, I was going to make damn sure they realized just how wrong they were to give up. The elevator chimed, and I wheeled Myra out onto the thick, noise-absorbing carpet of the Grand Meridian's 20th floor. Behind us, Lyra gently guided Selene. We walked in complete, suffocating silence. The girls kept stealing glances at me, but I didn't say a word. I had kept them alive during the outbreak, but their willingness to just lie down and let the monsters slaughter them still burned like acid in my chest. I settled them into the massive luxury suite, ordered enough room service to feed a small army, tipped the bellboy, and walked right back out the door. I needed space. Down in the lobby bar, surrounded by the faint sound of jazz and businessmen in loosened ties, I ordered a whiskey neat. I hadn't touched alcohol since the Ashfords practically sold me into marriage. The burn felt incredible. As I sat there wallowing in the stress of assassins, monster outbreaks, and my suicidal wives, a woman named Rachel struck up a conversation with me. For an hour, we just talked like normal people. We traded complaints about work, stress, and life. For the first time in weeks, I actually smiled. When it was time for her to leave, she locked her vivid green eyes on mine, leaned in, and planted a kiss right on my lips. It was unexpected, electrifying, and exactly the kind of distraction I needed before heading back up to reality. I woke up the next morning at 4:00 a.m. on the suite's couch. Sleep was impossible. My mind was buzzing, and my new A-rank mana affinity was practically begging to be used. I decided to test out the extreme slaughtering demon body technique the system had rewarded me with. It was absolute torture. The first form felt like my spine was being twisted into a knot while burning mana leaked from every pore. My arms shook violently, and I collapsed flat on my back in a pool of my own sweat after only 20 seconds. But then the system pinged. That 20 seconds of pure agony had permanently increased my raw strength by 1%. The technique was literally burning my massive mana reserves to forcefully reconstruct my muscles. If I kept this up, I would be a walking tank. To cool off, I went for a jog around the hotel's massive garden grounds. But as I rounded a corner, I stopped dead in my tracks. 5 floors up, standing on a premium suite balcony, was an old man in a tank top moving through a slow-motion martial arts routine. My system instantly blared a warning in my head. It detected a 7th-tier grade technique. My jaw almost hit the floor. A 7th-tier technique was the kind of legendary power that could start a world war, and this old man was just casually doing it as a morning stretch. I immediately hid behind a tree, keeping my eyes locked on him while my system worked in the background, desperately trying to analyze and copy his movements. For 2 days, I stalked this old man. Every morning and every evening, I hid in the bushes, watching my system's analysis creep up agonizingly slow. 19%, 20%, 21%. On the third morning, the old man suddenly stopped mid-form. He tilted his head, looked directly at the exact tree I was hiding behind, and raised a finger, motioning for me to come to him. My heart dropped into my stomach. He casually stepped off his 5th-floor balcony. He didn't use mana to cushion his fall. He just floated down like a leaf and tapped his sandals lightly on the grass. He walked right up to me, flashing a terrifying, dangerous smile. He looked me up and down, completely seeing through me. "A mere C-rank affinity," he whispered, his voice grinding like gravel. "And yet you're trying to steal my technique." The air around him suddenly thickened, crushing down on my shoulders with the weight of an angry god. An illusion of blue, burning flames erupted behind him. "Tell me, boy," he sneered, "are you not afraid of dying?" My knees buckled under the immense pressure. I opened my mouth to respond, but before a single word could escape, a sharp, violent spike of agony drove directly into my skull. My frost sense screamed. Selene was having a seizure. I didn't care about the old man's pressure anymore. I ignored the crushing weight of a master who could kill me with a thought. I just told him to wait and vanished. I fired off my flame burst with terrifying intensity. The concrete tiles shattered beneath my feet as I turned into a human meteor. I blurred through the hotel lobby, leaving scorching winds that tore the hats off businessmen and sent women screaming. The elevator was too slow, so I hit the stairwell, blowing the heavy metal door off its hinges with my shoulder. I rocketed up 20 flights of stairs in seconds. I kicked the door of our suite open and was instantly blasted by a wall of sub-zero air. The entire room was a frozen tomb. The windows were solid ice, the walls were coated in thick white frost, and the carpet crunched under my boots. And lying in the center of the massive bed, buried under glittering ice crystals, was Selene. She was convulsing violently, her lips completely blue. Myra and Lyra were watching her helplessly, their faces tight with pure terror. I didn't hesitate. I fully unleashed my origin-grade berserk flame demon bloodline. Crimson fire roared from my right hand, casting wild shadows across the frozen walls as lava-like heat flooded my veins. The intense heat instantly began melting the ice, filling the room with thick steam. I grabbed Selene's freezing arm, jammed the emergency syringe into her vein, and pushed the serum in. Slowly, the violent convulsions stopped. Her breathing evened out, and the deadly frost receded back into her body. I kept my bloodline active, flooding the room with enough heat to evaporate the remaining water. I tucked her into the blankets, my heart hammering in my chest. When her blind eyes fluttered open, knowing exactly who had just saved her, I finally exhaled. I turned around to leave. The terrifying old man was still waiting for me down in the garden. I asked Myra and Lyra if they wanted me to order room service, but both of them quietly shook their heads. I was halfway to the door when a soft, shaky voice broke the silence. "We're sorry." I froze, my hand hovered over the doorknob. I thought my enhanced hearing was playing tricks on me. I turned around slowly. Lyra, the girl who hadn't spoken a single word out loud since her vocal cords were destroyed, spoke again. Her voice was strained, but there was real strength behind it. "We're sorry." Myra lowered her head, her crimson hair falling over her face, and whispered, "We are sorry for everything, and thank you." For a week, I had been furious at them, furious that they wanted to die, furious that they had given up when they had been blessed with so much talent and privilege. I wanted to yell at them, to shake them, to remind them that some people were born broken and still fought for every breath. But hearing those two simple words, seeing the genuine regret and gratitude on their faces, the anger that had been burning inside me just vanished. I stood there in the doorway, staring at the women who had treated me like absolute garbage since the day we were forced together. I wanted to stay angry. I wanted to hold on to the bitterness of bleeding for people who just wanted to give up. But seeing the raw, genuine gratitude on their faces, all that exhaustion and fury just washed away. We weren't just a bunch of broken outcasts thrown together to die anymore. The ice had finally broken. But this was only the beginning. They had no idea what I was holding in my system inventory. They thought they were permanently crippled. They thought their lives as the city's greatest heroes were over. But I had the D-rank echolocation, telepathy, and mana arms talent cards sitting right in my pocket. And with my new 100 times investment multiplier fully active, I wasn't just going to heal my wives. I was going to turn them back into absolute monsters. But before I could even begin planning our glorious comeback, reality hit me like a freight train. The terrifying, seventh-tier old man was still waiting for me down in the hotel garden. I had just boldly walked away from a legendary powerhouse who could crush my skull with a single thought, and I had to go face the music. I turned back to the door, a completely different kind of fire burning in my chest. The Ashford family thought they threw me away to die. The assassins thought we were easy prey. They were all dead wrong. My name is Dexter Ashford, and if the world thought a monster outbreak was terrifying, they haven't seen anything yet. If you want to see exactly how I deal with this seventh-tier master, watch the arrogant elites get their jaws shattered, and see my wives reclaim their thrones as the most terrifying heroines in the city, you do not want to miss part 2. Drop a like, smash that subscribe button, and make sure you turn on notifications for Gold Anime 24K right now, so you are the absolute first to know when the next episode drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.